Hello everyone, Ron and David here coming to you from our website, astrologynewsreport.com.
Now we look at the upcoming planetary patterns and predictions, what's in store in the heavens for January 5th to January 12th and beyond.
Today, January 5th, Venus is backing into Sagittarius. This sets up a whole new pattern in the zodiac. In addition to being retrograde, Venus is now also combust the Sun. That means that for the next 10 days, we won't be able to see Venus, either as the evening star or the morning star.
Yes, bad Buddha. When we can't see Venus, it is considered bad. That's because Venus is the planet of guidance. Not being able to see Venus means being without guidance.
Venus will be exactly conjunct the Sun on Saturday, January 11th. On January 16th, Venus will re-emerge as the morning star, visible in the east before sunrise.
Another important change happened when Venus retrograded into Sagittarius. Venus is now in mutual aspect with its dispositor, Jupiter, because Jupiter rules Sagittarius and is hanging out directly across the zodiac in Gemini.
And Jupiter is retrograde too. The two main benefics of Vedic astrology, Jupiter and Venus, are both retrograde, and at the same time they are in mutual aspect.
So, Ron, what does this all add up to?
Well, first off, both planets are strong because retrograde planets are at their closest to the Earth, and therefore brighter than usual in the heavens. But, being retrograde, they are not behaving normally.
Usually when Venus and Jupiter interact, we get too much of everything. It's the planet of pleasure plus the planet of increase. But when planets are retrograde, aren't they being held back in their expression?
Yep, that's true, David, but like we talked about in last week's show, since every planet has multiple meanings, it's not always clear just which meanings will be affected.
And then aren't there a couple of other factors interfering here, namely Mars and Saturn, which are both influencing Venus by their special aspects?
That's right, David. There's more stuff going on that complicates the pattern. Both Mars and Saturn are natural malefics, and by their special aspects, they are giving Venus a hard time, which would tend to bring out the negative side of Venus.
Oh boy, so now we have a retrograde Venus, Venus combust, Venus being squared by Mars, and Venus being aspected by Saturn. Sounds like Venus is in pretty poor shape.
Yep. The only positive contribution might be Jupiter's aspect, which we can't be so sure of since Jupiter is retrograde.
It sounds all very wonky. So what happens to Venus's significations?
Well, like I said, we get more of the negative side of Venus, such as selfishness, vanity, self-aggrandizement, greed, extravagance, lust without love, indulgence, facetiousness, fallacious appearances.
Wow! My goodness gracious, that gets the idea across. I guess we'll get plenty of examples to talk about in coming weeks.
I'll count on you to keep track of it. Now,
Yes.
on to other things. The Mars-Uranus opposition is an ongoing planetary pattern, which will be with us until Mars leaves Virgo on February 4th.
Already we have seen plenty of Mars-Uranus events of rebellion and violence, with last week's bombings in Russia as just one obvious example.
It's likely we will still have occurrences such as what happened in Volgograd and all the way through January. And then there's a break in February when Mars leaves Virgo, and then the pattern returns after March 24th, when Mars will once again be in Virgo, but this time retrograde. And a retrograde Mars pitted against Uranus could be even more dangerous.
Yes, just looking ahead a bit, since Mars retrograde suggests something that has been simmering for a long time and primed to blow. Here's my 2 cents for an upcoming nasty, the still unresolved and very much ongoing nuclear crisis in Fukushima.
Well, as a matter of fact, last week there was an item that did not appear in the mainstream media about Fukushima, It was reported that new steam has been seen rising from reactor number 3. That's the one where officials are concerned about a progressive meltdown in the spent fuel rod's containment pool.
All right, well, this unfolding crisis of a nuclear accident in slow motion has me very worried. It simply does not matter if much of the world has not been paying attention to this dire situation in Japan. A terrible scenario is in the offing as we speak, which could profoundly change world history and the way we live our lives, especially in the Northern Hemisphere.
Yeah, well, specifically, you are referring to the fact that if there is a complete meltdown at reactor number 3, all of us on planet Earth will be forced to notice, and in some rather unpleasant ways.
Yes, and there have been calls for this to become an international team effort at this point. Fingers crossed, my fellow humans.
All right, on to another item. Mercury changes signs, moving from Sagittarius into Capricorn on Wednesday, January 8th. Mercury, the planet of rational thought, data and facts, and objective analysis, likes being in the practical, realistic sign of Saturn. Mercury is free of influence here, that is, there won't be any aspects from other planets interfering.
Wow, this is sounds like a good thing. Maybe in the face of all these other problematic scenarios, at least we can look forward to some objective reporting from the media. And anyway, we shall see how it all works out and be reporting back to our audience next week.
Until then...